Welcome to GV247.tv, the Global Vision Channel, a non-profit web TV channel bringing biblical perspective to the world in which you live.
Hello, dear friends and family in Christ, and welcome back to our Channel 1 and the Weekend Prog here on Global Vision TV. As this week, we don't have the advertised programme with our deeper delve into AI and transhumanism. Both of these programmes will be aired over the next couple of weeks. And that's because our eyes are, as ever, very much on Israel. Not just because we love the people, but because what happens in the Middle East, and in particular in Israel, affects all of us, according to the Bible, especially in the light of where we are now in the Bible timeline and the prophecies concerning Jesus' return and the end of the age as we know it. So, as we continue to pray for the situation in Israel, as promised, we have another Israel update on this Weekend Prog special and for Channel 25 Focus on Israel. Now, can I also point you to Channel 14, The End Times, which has got dozens of programmes by experts. Many of them are very short overviews of Bible prophecy, as well as much longer programmes. Now, if you're already watching here on our YouTube channel, just click on playlists. Otherwise, go to our website, globalvision.tv, and either click on the link at the top of the page or scroll down the pictures and click one to find out more about that particular channel. And you can then click on it to go straight through. Now, we give thanks and glory to God for all he has done through Global Vision TV over the last 2 decades. It is only sound teaching, so it's important, please, that you subscribe, as the YouTube algorithms are always changing. And please like this, if you do like it, and share. We need to get the truth out there. So subscribe, click the bell to be notified of each new programme. Don't be afraid to comment. We enjoy your comments and getting into communication and conversation with you. So today, we welcome back our dear friend and colleague, Tricia Miller. Now, she's the director of Camera's Partnership of Christians and Jews, and there'll be more about that in the description below. Now, based in the US, but working around the world, she monitors Christian organisations and media activity related to the Arab-Israeli conflict. Now, her articles have appeared in numerous publications, including First Things, The Allgemeiner, New English Review, Breaking Israel News, The Times of Israel, JNS, Jerusalem Post Christian Edition. She's the author of a couple of books related back to Esther and the current Christian anti-Judaism and anti-Zionism. So after all that, welcome back, Tricia. It's so good to see you again.
Thank you, Deborah. Thank you for that introduction. It's so good to see you. It's good to be here.
Tricia, you must be exhausted. I imagine you're working round the clock with everything that's going on at the moment. But we've brought you back because many of our viewers have asked to be able to understand more fully the extent of that existential threat that Israel is dealing with, particularly with the ongoing narrative that Israel is responding disproportionately to what Hamas did on the 7th of October. And viewers, I'm addressing you here because though you may be pro-Israel or supporter of Israel or not, you will not have as full a story as I believe you're going to hear from Tricia. She is an expert in these areas. So to that end, Tricia, it would be good to survey the various fronts on which Israel is under attack. Now, we know there are many. And if you don't mind, it would be really good if you could address Hamas, of course. There's Hezbollah, there's terrorism, or the terrorists in Judea and Samaria. There's what's going on in Syria. There's the Houthis, Iran, the ICJ, and of course, the media. And we'll deal with that last. Tricia, over to you.
Yes, Israel is facing an existential threat. This is nothing new, however. They have been since before the state was created. The Jewish people have faced genocide before, through the Holocaust and centuries before that. So this is an existential threat. This is nothing new. And I want people to understand that this is not just a current, this didn't just happen beginning October 7th. This goes back historically, also spiritually. There are spiritual forces here driving the enemies of Israel to want to annihilate them. And Hamas in particular, we'll start with Hamas because that's the main player right now in this current war, although the other forces, all of which you mentioned, they're all active. But Hamas's charter states, I'm going to read one statement. It says, Israel will exist and will continue to exist only until Islam will obliterate it, just as it obliterated others before it. This is Hamas's intent, and there's much more. If people look up Hamas's charter, you can just find it on the internet. They're not hiding this. Their intent is to annihilate the Jewish people. And so you mentioned something about people being upset about this being a disproportionate response. There's nothing disproportionate about this. If Israel was going to be disproportionate, I mean, if they were going to respond in proportion, they would go in and rape women, cut off people's heads, burn people alive, do the horrible atrocities that were done to Israeli civilians by Hamas on October 7th. Israel, on the other hand, is being very careful and making targeted attacks on terrorists who perpetrated the attacks and who are firing the rockets. They're taking out Hamas. They're doing everything they can to protect civilians. So it's completely opposite.
What about Hezbollah? Some people don't even know there's a difference between Hamas and Hezbollah. Who are they and what is their agenda?
Hezbollah is the terrorist organization that essentially is running Lebanon now. So Lebanon is on the northern border of Israel. Hamas is in the south, in Gaza. Hezbollah is on the northern border, and there is a Lebanese government, but basically Hezbollah is in control, and they are in complete agreement with the mission of Iran to annihilate Israel. In fact, they're supplied and instructed by Iran, so is Hamas. Their purpose is also to annihilate all Jews.
Now, the land of Judea and Samaria, it's called in the world, it's in the news, they're calling it the Palestinian territories. Tricia, could you give us a more full explanation of how this came about? What is this about? Who are the terrorists there?
Well, Judea and Samaria is the biblical heartland of the nation of Israel. And in the world, the term has become, that we use to describe it as the West Bank. But what is it the West Bank of? Let's think about the language for a minute so we understand what's going on here. It's the West Bank. It's the land that's on the western side of the Jordan River. And it was named that by Jordan when Jordan illegally occupied the land from 1948 to 1967. In 1967, Israel won a war that, again, was initiated by Arabs trying to wipe them out, and they got possession of that land again. So the reason it's called the West Bank is that was Jordan's term for it. And it is now governed, parts of it are now governed by the Palestinian Authority. And again, their purpose is to annihilate the state of Israel. They have a little different method of doing it. They're not as overtly violent as Hamas, but they have the same method. There are ongoing terrorist attacks in Judea and Samaria, which have increased exponentially since October 7th. So the IDF is having to fight in the West Bank as well, taking out terrorists.
Again, just because we have new subscribers all the time, could you give us just a little potted history of how the so-called Palestinians came to be, or the Palestinian territories?
Well, first of all, the term Palestine was created by the Romans, all right, about 1800 years ago, after another Jewish revolt against the Roman occupiers in their land. The Romans expelled Jews, they took over Jerusalem, they renamed Jerusalem, and they renamed the land Palestine as kind of the final insult to the Jewish people. And it was that's the Latin derivative of the word for Philistines. So what the Romans were doing, we're talking 1800 years ago, okay? What the Romans were doing was throwing in the face of the Jews the name of their ancient enemies, the Philistines, who happened to live in Gaza, by the way. It's another interesting connection. So in the Old Testament, you read about David and the Israelites who were fighting the Philistines. So the Romans named the territory Palestine. It was under Roman domination. There has never been a Palestinian government, never been a Palestinian government or a separate people. Before the establishment of Israel in 1948, the people who lived in the land were called Palestinians. They were the Jewish people. It was the Jewish people who adopted the term Palestinians because it wasn't Israel yet. It was known geographically as Palestine. The first newspaper, which is now called the Jerusalem Post, the name was the Palestine Post. So it was the Jews who identified as Palestinians before 1948. The Arabs who lived there wanted nothing to do with it because they recognized that geographical designation referred to the land of Israel. They identified as Arabs. They didn't start identifying as Palestinians until Yasser Arafat in the 1960s decided this was going to be a great propaganda tool, and he created the term. And then they started calling themselves Palestinians. And the PLO, Palestinian Liberation Organization, was founded in 1964. And that's significant to know because they call themselves the Palestinian Liberation Organization, PLO. That, again, is a militant terrorist organization designed, created for one purpose, to get the Jews out of the land. And what were they talking about liberating in 1964? They weren't, the people interpret that now as, oh, they're just trying to liberate the land where they currently are, what we call the West Bank. They want to liberate that from Israel. No, in 1964, Israel did not have authority over that land. What they were talking about in 1964 was what we know of as Israel proper. So the intent from the very beginning of the PLO, that's who's in control of the West Bank now, was to drive the Jews out of all the land. That's their end goal.
Back in the late 80s, Tricia, I did an interview with a Texan oil man who had actually met up with Arafat and his wife and all these people because they were talking about, looking for oil and what have you. And the stories he told me would make your hair curl. By the way, he says that he shared the gospel with them. But anyway, but Arafat died an incredibly wealthy man. We know, I used to actually track every week the number of lorries that would go into the West Bank, into Judea and Samaria, into those areas, taking aid to the people. The millions, if not billions of dollars, pounds, euros that have gone into that area from all nations, including my tax money and your tax money.
That's right.
Where's it gone? Because so many Christians don't know.
Well, I would love to comment on what you said about aid going into Gaza, because that's a very current issue. Israel has always allowed supplies to go into Gaza. The media will tell you that it's barricaded, that they're imprisoned, et cetera, et cetera. Those are all lies. Israel has always allowed supplies to go in, including all the supplies that have been used to build these hundreds of miles of tunnels that the IDF is now discovering. The IDF just issued a statement this week. They have found hundreds of miles, far more than they even expected. And their intelligence is pretty good, but even far more than they expected. And currently in this war situation, Israel is still allowing truckloads of, quote, humanitarian supplies to go into Gaza because of the world outcry, but because also of the way Israel always works to protect civilians. And so supplies have been going in there, but the Gazan people are not getting them. Hamas is taking them. I've seen videos of armed Hamas terrorists on top of the trucks and taking the supplies and even shooting to death, killing civilians they're desperate. They're trying to get to the trucks to get supplies. So when the world thinks that we, as you said, our tax dollars, we're paying for this, we are sending humanitarian supplies into Gaza, all we're doing is resupplying Hamas and strengthening them to continue the war against Israel. The hostages are not getting any food. I've heard testimony after testimony of the current hostages being held in totally inhumane conditions. They're not getting food. They're practically starved. They get very, very little. And the Gazan civilians are not getting it either. So that's another contrast between Israel and Hamas. Israel takes care of civilians, even at the expense of knowing if they let stuff in there, it's going to help Hamas. And Hamas doesn't care a bit about their civilians. They use them as human shields, and they terrorize Israeli civilians. They're totally opposite sides of the coin of how they treat people and their value of life.
I've seen these photos and the video footage as well, and somebody who's absolutely dead set on not wanting to know the truth will be listening to us and saying, oh, that's our narrative. That's the pro-Israel narrative. And the thing is, I mean, as an investigative reporter, apart from anything else, I mean, I have absolutely thoroughly researched. And dear viewer, if you are not a person who's on social media, you may not have got the full story. And it is really horrific. And because I know that there is a younger audience here, I can't go into detail, but we have had eyewitness accounts from hardened medics, forensic experts. I've spoken to an IDF commander, for example. Unfortunately, I couldn't use the interview for security reasons and so on. Many different people. We have been given information, and I have seen footage that I wish I'd never seen. Now, way back when we were investigating ISIS, for example, I've seen it all. I've seen horrific footage from India, from Christians who, and particularly the women who have been murdered, tortured. We know what's happening in Nigeria. But I have to say, what happened on the 7th of October, what made it worse, I think in one way, is that sadly it wasn't just Hamas flying in. It had been planned for a long, long time. When I say flying in, I mean coming in on these
the gliders,
glider things, the paragliders. Even some of their neighbors across the border or behind the fence of their kibbutz, people called Palestinians who they'd maybe even worked with and been friendly with,
had
taken part. And I've heard some terrible testimonies of people that they thought they were friends, but they were able to make money by even just taking some of them away and selling them over to Hamas.
Yes, that's true. That's absolutely true. That happened.
And what the Israeli government did, out of respect, because it's a family. It's the Jews. It's a family. Was they did not release all the information at the beginning about what had been done to the women. You can use don't use your imagination. You know the word I'm talking about, the 4-lettered word beginning with R, but we're talking horrific. And it was done to the men and to children. And again, many eyewitness accounts as well as testimonies. There are very few have survived it, but dear ones, please keep praying for the hostages because it is ongoing. And some of the very brave hostages who've been released have actually shared some of these details. I just got a report yesterday, Tricia, of another 2 of the men have been murdered by them. This is horrible, but we're looking into this because we're not afraid to look into it because we do need to pray. So that's Hamas, Hezbollah, and we've talked about Judea and Samaria, where the terrorists are actually acting from. A lot of people, believers, should be concerned about people who are Christians over there. And many of them are caught up in fear as well, because they can't even speak out to the so-called Palestinian authorities. Could you just explain briefly, just before we move on again, Tricia? So Hamas is a terrorist organization. The BBC usually describe them as an organization which many countries call terrorists, but it is a terrorist organization.
Yes.
So is Hezbollah. But could you just explain again about the difference between Gaza and what's known as the West Bank and the Palestinian authorities with Mahmoud Abbas? Could you just explain that, please?
Okay, Hamas is the terrorist organization that is in control of Gaza. The Palestinian Authority is in control of what's called the Palestinian territories in what the world calls the West Bank. I call it Judea and Samaria. And they're two different organizations. They actually don't really like each other, don't really get along, but they have the same intent, which is to kill Jews. Hamas is much more overtly violent in that they have been continuously shooting rockets at southern Israel, especially ever since they took over the Gaza Strip, since Israel left in 2005. Israel left Gaza in a very bad way, mistakenly believing if they give up land for peace. That was the idea then. Okay, we'll give up land, we'll give it to them. They pulled all the Jews out of Gaza. So since 2005, there have been no Israelis, no Jews in Gaza. And the next year, Hamas came into power. With the Palestinian Authority, they've been there longer under the name of the PLO, Palestinian Liberation Organization, since Arafat. And as I said, the PLO was established in 1964, and they claim they're for the liberation of Palestine. And the world mistakenly believes, oh, they just want, their little bit of land because they want a Palestinian state. That's not true. Ever since 1948, the Palestinian people have refused a state. They have been offered it first by the UN in 1948, and repeatedly since then. They refuse it because they don't want a two-state solution. This is what the world keeps believing, what the media keeps promoting. They don't want a Palestinian state. They want one side by side. They don't want a two-state solution. The world keeps talking about two-state. They don't want that. They only want a Palestinian state in the entire land. They chant when they're demonstrating, they chant from the river to the sea. That means from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea. They say Palestine will be free. The PLO covenant, it was written by the first PLO chairman, and it reflects their Arab nationalism. They emphasize that all of that land is part of an Arab land. And that goes back to Islam. If Islam's ever been in control of any land, they say it's always theirs. It can't be, governed by anybody else. What they say in the PLO covenant is, the covenant is very clear. They talk about an Arab state. And the purpose of this Arab-Israeli conflict is to destroy Israel. In their whole covenant, they never talk about a Palestinian state alongside Israel. It's only to destroy Israel. And can I comment a minute back to your comment about the people who attacked the Israelis on October 7th? Yes, the first people in were Hamas terrorists, but behind them came what we consider to be civilians. They weren't necessarily even armed, but a number of them were people, like you said, who actually worked in these kibbutzim. The Israelis thought they were friends. What's ironic is that the people who were killed, who suffered all these atrocities, these kibbutzim in the south had the philosophy of they were living there to make peace. They actually believed that they could live there, make peace with the Palestinians, the Gazans, and I've heard numerous testimonies of the survivors say, that we really thought they were our friends, and we thought that they thought like us. We thought they just wanted a good life, that they want to live in peace. And they have been violently and horribly awakened to the truth that no, they don't want that. And when the terrorists went in, they knew exactly where everything was. This is key. They knew how many people were in each house. They knew which houses had dogs. They knew where the guns were stored. They went there first. They got the guns. They knew everything. Why? Because the Gazans who had been working there, getting paid by the Israelis to work on the kibbutzim, had drawn maps. They had the civilian Gazans had drawn maps and given it to Hamas. And then they went in after the terrorists, and they also took hostages. Civilians took hostages. They also just robbed whatever they could rob, whatever they wanted to take from the houses, they took. And the polls that have been taken after October 7th show that the vast majority of people in Gaza and the vast majority of the people in the West Bank under the Palestinian Authority, they support what Hamas did on October 7th. So these are not people who are looking to live in peace. These are people who support the agendas of these terrorist organizations to get rid of Israelis. Now, yes, there are Palestinian Christians. Yes, there are some Palestinians who do want peace. And I want to make that clear. But I'm saying the majority, what is shown by the interviews, by the polls, is that the majority of the quote civilians, and I say that because we don't really know, because the terrorists dress as civilians a lot of times so that they won't be targeted by the IDF. So because they know that the IDF will not intentionally shoot a civilian. So the terrorists dress as civilians. It's hard to know how many are terrorists and how many are civilians. But anyway, whoever we can identify as civilians, the majority of them support what Hamas did. And that's a truth that needs to be understood by the world at large, that Israel does not have a partner in any Palestinian Authority leader or anywhere who wants to work for a two-state solution.
Mm-hmm. And it's really horrible for those of us who have been there and maybe made friends with some of the Arabs or people who are, even those who say they're Christian. I could talk. My husband and I, we've had some adventures when we've been over there filming. Oh my goodness. And Tricia, this will lead us to discuss Islam probably in part 2 of this program. Just a couple of interesting things. Well, first of all, when we've been over there, we've been filming in the south, we've been taken into certain installations where even, the public wouldn't normally be taken. But the minute you start to go down there, you hear the thump. That's the only word I can use. It's like a thump of rockets. And I mean, this has been going on for years and years and years. We interviewed, people who worked in the kibbutzes. What they have done with the land. And, back in the 60s, even my mum and dad were kind of aging hippies, even though they were my dad was a banker and mum was a school teacher, but everybody wanted to go to work on a kibbutz for a while. And because they were taking this land that Mark Twain described, there was no trees, there was no agriculture, and they turned the nation around again, like the prophecy said. Love that one from Isaiah about the desert blossoming. Tricia, we actually filmed literal plants and fruit growing out of the sand, out of the desert. Because, of course, the Israelis, having some of the most brilliant minds, had worked out a way to do this, the desalination and so on. It's just astonishing. Now, just a wee interesting thing, dare I bring this up? If my memory serves me correct from the Old Testament, and I'm sure everybody will be on like a ton of bricks if I'm wrong, there were a group of creatures that the Bible refers to as Nephilim, and I do believe they were last seen in Gaza. I think that was the last time they were mentioned in the Old Testament, but that's a subject for another day. So we will have to come back to Islam. You brought it up first, Tricia, so it's your fault, because this is the point. This is the point. They don't want the two-state solution. They want to offer themselves. So we're going to leave that, I think, till part 2. So we've looked at Hamas, Hezbollah, the terrorists in Judea and Samaria. We cannot forget the root is Islam. And nobody talks about that. Even very few Christian commentators will talk about why they want the land for themselves, and why they hate the Jews. So I just want to speak about one more group today, because of what's happening in the world at the moment. And that's a group that nobody's really heard of up until quite recently in Yemen, the Houthis. What is going on there? And why is, again, Israel getting the blame for what's happening in the Suez Canal and all the rest of it? Could you give us a little bit background of that too, please?
Well, Israel gets the blame for everything. That's the way it's always been. They're getting the blame for this war now. And people completely forget that Hamas started it on October 7th with a brutal massacre and taking of civilian hostages. Okay, the Houthis are in Yemen, which is not even next door to Israel. If you look at a map, it's not even adjoining Israel, but these again are terrorists who are funded and directed by Iran. In addition to Islam and the religious beliefs being the foundation of this whole war on Israel, Iran is the one behind the scenes directing. And Iran has stated its purpose, the reason it wants to develop a nuclear weapon, its purpose is to destroy Israel. And then the US. Iran calls Israel the little Satan, and the US is the big Satan. So it is all about Israel right now. All the focus is on Israel, but it's also all about the Western world. And that's something that people need to understand. I'm sorry, I'm getting off a little bit here, but Israel is on the front lines for all of us. Hamas has cells operating throughout Europe already, and some believe in the US already. Iran has certainly stated its intent to also target the US after Israel. So this is all about Western civilization, which again goes back to Islam and the need for Islam to conquer the world. So we'll get into that later, like you said. So the Houthis are of the same philosophy, and they're being funded and directed by Iran. And they started off, again, they took the initiative. They started firing missiles at Israel. There are warships from the US, the UK, other nations there trying to protect the shipping lanes in the Red Sea, because what the Houthis, besides just shooting missiles at Israel and trying to cause destruction, they're also attacking ships in the Red Sea. They're attacking the shipping lanes. They want to shut down shipping. This is what they've done, is that it's a declaration of war on the Western world. If they can shut down shipping, affect all of us, the whole supply, chain. So they're a militant terrorist organization, also with the intent to not only destroy Israel, but threaten the Western world.
Thank you, Tricia. I think we're going to end part 1 here at the moment.
Okay.
And when we come back with part 2 for next week, we are going to really look into Islam, Iran, which we mentioned in our last program, and why it's called Iran, and as you say, their whole raison d'etre, as it were. I'd like to look at Syria, Jordan, ICJ, and then the media and anti-Semitism. So, dear viewer, there is a lot still to come. Please share this far and wide, and come back for the next program in part 2, because again, we really need to get the truth out there. This is not a narrative that is biased. We're looking at the truth here, and hopefully that you'd be able to check and be willing to check if you're not already understanding what the Bible says and what God says about his people. So, Tricia, I'd just like to thank you very much again. And if you don't mind, we'll record part 2 and just keep this going, because the more we can get the truth out, and that's your job, the better we can be praying. So thank you again for your time, Tricia. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
This is GV247.tv, bringing biblical perspective to the world in which you live. a powerful free resource with hundreds of short films on a wide range of Bible topics from experts around the world, plus full-length sermons and programs for teaching and encouragement. Choose from current affairs, signs of the times, a chance to voice your own opinion, and special offers on our full-length feature films, documentaries, and study materials. At over 4 hours in length, the Lamplight Project is a systematic 12-part Bible study series, a powerful teaching tool that begins with the origins of life and takes the viewer on a comprehensive journey packed with high-profile interviews, film, graphics, and illustrations, concluding with the return of Christ and an encouragement to stand firm and be faithful. Complete with a free study guide download for both personal and group study, this powerful interactive guide connects to over 1,000 programs with expert interviews on gv247.tv, our free service web TV channel. Does My Life Have Meaning? A powerful 1-hour presentation produced from the Lamplight Project. With a free copy of the Gospel of Luke, this film is crammed with engaging interviews, film and graphics, a life-challenging film to those searching for answers. As distributors for the Jesus film, we offer this timeless movie based on Luke's Gospel. This clear presentation of the life of Jesus Christ has been viewed worldwide and translated into over 1,200 languages. We provide the film with a free copy of the Gospel of Luke. The Daniel Project is a popular TV documentary that presents an overview of Bible prophecy and an encouragement to read the signs of the times. Hailed as one of the best TV films to be made on the subject, DVD extras feature a heart-to-heart interview about the way of rescue. Based loosely on the documentary, The Daniel Connection is a full-length feature film. This fictional thriller incorporates many of the themes promoted through pop culture and social media which affect people on a global scale. Launched at the Cannes Film Festival, The Daniel Connection points the ever-skeptical viewer to search the Bible for answers to life's deepest questions. We've been serving the body of Christ for over 30 years, and if you would like further information, please do not hesitate to get in touch.